Perfect. Welcome everyone to our Connect Over Coffee for spring semester. We're so happy for you all to join us and for you all to get to meet our guest speakers this evening. We'll be able to answer many of your questions regarding their specific areas of librarianship. My name is Juliana, and I'm the events coordinator for ALASC for San Jose State. And I'm also joined by Lisa, who's our events assistant as well. So I'll go ahead and start introducing our panelists. So first off, we have Diane. Diane represents the USC Gould School of Law as a law librarian. She first started off her career with a JD from Loyola and practicing law in private practice before transitioning into librarianship and receiving her MLIS from the SJSU School. Upon joining USC Gould School of Law as a law librarian, she teaches legal research to first-year law students and conducts legal research workshops for non-law students. And she also provides comprehensive reference and research support to JD, LLM, MCL, and BS legal studies students. And then she also supports and supervises the library research assistants. And in some professional committees she's a part of includes Scholar, SCALL, and AALL. And she's the current co-chair of the SCALL Grants Committee. Next slide. We also have Janet joining us from San Diego Public Libraries. She started working for San Diego Public Libraries while in high school and has been there for over 30 years with the organization. She currently serves as the branch manager for the Carmel Mountain Ranch Library, and she is a graduate of UC San Diego with a BA in history, a master's in history from San Diego State, and currently an MLIS from San Jose State. And she has contributed to the San Diego Night Sketch Nights program since 2021. So feel free to wave, Janet, if you're also able to turn your camera on. Next slide. We're also joined by Natalie, who currently works for UC Riverside as the metadata librarian, and she's responsible for digital asset management and creating and maintaining metadata for the library's digital collections. Prior to this role, she was the library's distinctive collections cataloger and worked on a diverse range of materials across special and general collections. She's passionate about reparative description and participates in other organizations such as SACO and NCAO Comics and Fictions Funnel and the California Library Association Technical Services Interest Group. She recently completed her MLIS at San Jose State in 2023 and also has a Master's of Music and Composition from the University of Michigan. So thank you for joining us, Natalie. We're also represented by Callie, who has also recently received her Master's of Library and Information Sciences from San Jose in 2023. She currently is a lecturer at the School of Information as well as a teen librarian for the Virginia Beach Public Library. Previously, she has also worked for the San Diego County Library. During her time with the iSchool, she was the VR team lead and Dr. Chow's events and meetings assistant. And additionally, she worked closely with Dr. Chow and Bethany Winslow through presenting at professional conferences, including ALA, the ALA conference, the CLA conference, and the Internet Librarian 2023 conference, as well as the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums conference. She also received the Director's Award for Excellence in Innovation in 2024 from the iSchool. And she's also a current member of two honor societies, Phi Kappa Phi and Beta Phi Mu. So welcome, Kaylee, excuse me. And then we are also joined by Sabrina, who currently works for Stanford University Libraries as a digital archivist for the Diane Feinstein senatorial papers at Stanford, where she arranges, describes, preserves, and provides access to born digital materials associated with Senator Feinstein's 30-year congressional career. Sabrina completed many internships focused on digital curation, digital preservation, and information organization while pursuing her MLIS. Most notably, she was a 2023 Library of Congress Junior Fellow at the National Audiovisual Conservation Center in Culpeper, Virginia, a digitization intern at the Center for Sacramento History, and an archival intern at the American Film Institute. She was also the former webmaster for the ALA and SLA student chapters, and she's she's a firm believer of getting involved with student organizations as a way to network and develop professional competencies. And then while not focusing on file fixity and metadata, Sabrina can be found watching movies, knitting, and hiking around the Bay Area, as well as spending time with her cat, Elfie. Welcome, Sabrina. And then we're also joined by Betsy, who is currently the library media specialist at Sequoia High School. She started in this role 9 years ago after working 11 years at Menlo Atherton, 6 years in San Francisco Unified School District, and 2 years in the Peace Corps. She's taught English, digital photography, journalism, and a freshman elective will called digital storytelling. She holds a BA in literature from the University of Michigan and Masters of Information Science from SJSU, along with a teacher librarian authorization. In the fall of 2024, she was awarded a James Patterson bonus, and she's an Adobe innovator and an extended essay coordinator in the IB program. And if you want to, feel free to ask her questions about her book bike, which is also featured here on the slide. And then did we highlight? I think we highlighted all our panelists with the current slide deck. Hopefully, I'm not missing anyone. Um, So with that being said, we can go ahead and stop sharing the slide deck, and I'll go ahead and spotlight our speakers really quickly before we get started. And then we'll go ahead and add everyone's spotlight. Sorry, everyone. Trying to find everyone on my screen really quickly. And so we'll go ahead. Everyone's been spotlighted so everyone can see. I do have questions pre-planned in advance in case the audience doesn't have questions right away. But if for any of you who already have questions, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand to unmute yourself. Or you can feel free to include it in the chat and we can read it out loud to our panelists. So right off the bat, does anyone have any questions for our lovely panelists? If not, I also give time for people to, oh, how are you all today? Thank you, Alyssa. So if everyone wants to share how they're doing today, I know it is a Monday. It's also St. Patrick's Day. Feel free to unmute and share. Or you could also include it in the chat.
I'm good. It's raining here in Redwood City, so I'm very excited about that.
I'm good too. I'm on the East Coast, so it's a little bit later here, but it actually also has been raining all day, so I'm happy about that. I really enjoy the rain. I hope everybody else is doing good too.
I'm doing good today. We are on spring break at the Gould Law School, so it was a very quiet day at the library. The librarians are still working, but there's very few students on campus. So I enjoy interacting with the students, but it's nice when it's quiet sometimes too.
I'm going to chime in and say that I'm exhausted because I just did a PD for our district. So I'm a high school librarian in Redwood City. So it's great to see some Bay Area folks. And so part of the job is to also lead sessions to my staff. And so this was an all district session. And I said in my bio that I'm an Adobe innovator. And so I'm really trying to figure out how to merge technology while building a community of readers and storytellers. So that's why the bag's under my eyes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I guess we'll give time for some people to also type their questions in the chat. I have some, again, pre-planned questions. So one that we can start off with is what led you to pursue your specific specialty of librarianship, especially because all of you represent such a diverse range of specialties. Would you like to share a little bit more about why you ultimately pursued your specific specialty over others?
I can start. Law librarianship was sort of a natural fit for me because I've been practicing law for so many years, but I was the lawyer that always wanted to be a librarian and finally made that change. So I was actually open to working perhaps like in a public library or in the educational institution. And I got my MLIS and started sending out resumes and cover letters, and ended up at USC, the University of Southern California. And I'm thrilled with that. That's where life led me. But certainly when I was at SJSU, I was open to pursuing all different kinds of librarianship and tried to take classes, et cetera, that would prepare me for a wide variety of situations.
So I started, as I noted, in high school, but my original plan was not to be a librarian. My original plan was to be a college professor. Once I got to San Diego State and started working on my master's thesis, I decided I did not want to publish books. So at that point, I was already in the library system and I already had a pretty good network. So um, from there, right after I finished my master's, I went into the MLIS program for San Jose. And then soon after, I was hired as a youth services librarian. Sorry, I actually muted myself. Um, and then from working at Mira Mesa as a youth services librarian, I got promoted eventually to be a branch manager.
I'm another one that wasn't like intending to become a librarian, at least at the beginning of my career. But when I was getting my first master's degree, I was a library assistant in their music library. And when I finished, I realized, well, I need a job. And the only job I could find was at an elementary school library. And I discovered very quickly I did not want to work with kids. So the following year, I was able to get a position at UC Riverside as a collection maintenance assistant. And my favorite part of that job ended up being when I was poking around in the catalog and kind of investigating records and trying to understand what was going on with them when books were missing. And I was able to take some cataloging classes with the director of the technical services department while I was in that position, which helped me move into my next position there as cataloger. And a few years into that position, I realized I wanted to be able to keep moving up and forward. And the natural progression then was to get the MLIS. And pretty soon on in that program, I realized I wanted to be able to expand my skill set and be able to work more in the digital collections metadata side, which is a bit different than traditional MARC cataloging. So I made sure to pick up some classes there and did the digital asset management certificate. And that set me up to get my current position.
I'll jump in to talk about the teacher librarian pathway, which is that I started teaching right out of college in the Peace Corps. And actually, one of my projects was to set up an English language library there. So I've always been sort of library adjacent. And then, and in college, I worked in the law library at U of M, University of Michigan. And then I became an English teacher that turned into an art credential and taught digital photography and journalism. And then that ended up setting me up for the perfect position when the spot was vacated at Sequoia and they needed someone to step in. And I knew I didn't have the degree, but they said, well, why don't you try it with your expertise? And then I ended up enrolling in the MLS or MLIS program. I guess that was 2018. It was pre-pandemic. So I graduated 2020. Woohoo, no graduation. And so first was the library authorization for my single subject credential. So you have to have that if you want the teacher librarian authorization. And then I stayed on for the master's. So that's the teacher route, which is obviously very different. I do love teenagers. There's a lot of community building happening, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
I kind of took a different path into librarianship. I kind of started during the pandemic, so it was very much kind of an existential, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I went in very open-minded with where I might end up in librarianship and archives. And it was really through my internships where I really developed an interest in digital preservation in particular. I took a lot of the classes in the information organization pathway first. I think Info 202 kind of kicked me off in that direction of kind of the more technical services side of librarianship in particular. And then I kind of just ran with it and took like all the metadata, the digital preservation class, digital curation, and that was really where I kind of found my groove. And it was really the internships that then solidified that that's what I wanted to do. So that was kind of an important piece for me, was putting it into real world practice and figuring out I like this, I don't like that, and realized I thought initially I was going to go into cataloging, and I kind of branched off and did more of the metadata and digital preservation and processing side of things. So
I'll round out the group. So I kind of stumbled into libraries really young, like Janet, and then decided I was bored because libraries were completely different back in the early 2000s than they are now, public libraries. And I ended up going back into them later because I needed a job that paid well and had benefits. Um, but I ended up loving it, and that's when I decided I wanted to go to school and get my MLIS, which of course I ended up doing. But a little bit like Sabrina, I feel like the opportunities that I had during my program to do the student assistantships, to do these different things really helped me kind of hone what I wanted to do. And I'm actually a military spouse, so we move around a lot, which makes getting a job and keeping it challenging. So I'm happy to offer any advice on that I can. But one thing that I've discovered is the remote side of things has been really great for me to sort of build up a lot of that. And while I have now actually had to step away from my in-person public library job as a teen librarian because we're getting ready to move, I am still teaching at the iSchool in the MLIS program. So that I sort of stumbled into as well through being a peer mentor. I discovered that I really enjoyed sort of that process of helping and guiding. And it's become something that I'm really, really starting to enjoy. This is my first semester teaching, so I'm brand new to it, but it's been phenomenal. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that route as well.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for sharing. Those were all very unique pathways into the profession. It was really insightful to hear how you all kind of got to where you are, because I'm sure a lot of students have similar questions. And I think some people started putting some in the chat, so I'll go ahead and just review those there as well. I know Jonathan asked where it was, they're about to finish their MLIS program and wanted to identify certain places to look for librarian positions. I know some of the panelists have started answering in the chat. I don't know if there's anyone who wanted to elaborate more on their response in the chat, or if you haven't, even provide additional resources that may be beneficial as well.
For us, everything takes place through the city of San Diego. Since we're a governmental entity, so that's going to be the case for I'd say the county library system as well. Their hiring takes place through the county library system. Just because you are part of a city or county, don't forget that there's smaller subdivisions within that you can look to see if they're looking for librarians. Like within San Diego County, there's the city and the county library system. There's Coronado, there's Oceanside, Carlsbad, and National City and Escondido. So you would think that there might be just two systems, but there's actually plenty more in addition to all the colleges and what corporate libraries might be out there. Or I think one of the hospitals has like a health library as well. So I would say websites, but if we're getting in the public library, it doesn't hurt to volunteer. Also doesn't hurt to start at a lower position. If there's no librarian positions that are open, get a paraprofessional position. Library assistant 2, library assistant 3, that would be like library clerks, or for us, library assistants. They do tasks which are somewhat clerical and somewhat professional in nature. So that will get your foot in the door. Enable you to then, interview for librarian positions when they open up.
I want to jump on that and say that, Janet, I completely agree. I think a lot of what I've seen from my peers is that they're struggling because maybe they don't have a ton of experience yet in an LIS field, but they're trying to get in as a librarian. Um, I did what you did, which was to start kind of at the bottom, right? So getting in, for me, I worked for the county of San Diego, and so for us it was a library tech job. But any experience that you can get is worth it. Just get your foot in the door. It doesn't matter what the position is, what the role is. It's going to help. I mean, as you heard from basically everybody, we went from one thing to the next thing to the next thing and made connections and learned stuff, and it takes a minute sometimes to get to where you want to go. Just get your foot in the door. That's great advice, Janet.
Sabrina, do you want to
Natalie,
go?
I don't know if you're going to say the same thing, but
I was
from
going
an
to talk about
archival
email
side,
listservs.
I was going to say archives
For
gig.
academic
That's the big
libraries, I
one.
see a lot posted on.
I think there's a delay. But
Sorry,
I
I'll
was going to
stop. That
jump
was me
in.
cutting off. I'll stop.
No worries. I was going to recommend Archives Gig if anybody has heard of that. It's leans more on the archival side, but librarian positions kind of also filter through. And I get emails every single day from them. I mean, it's near constant, and they're all over the U.S. Different states. There's some remote positions as well. That would be my recommendation. Would be to sign up for those emails. And I think I need a library job. INALJ might still be around as well in terms of another list serve. So those would be my two recommendations. I found my current position through Archives Gig. So.
I'm not sure if Natalie, you wanted to, I know there was like a lag earlier, so I'm not sure if you wanted to finish your response.
Yeah, sorry about that. If you know kind of like what particular area of libraries you're looking into going into, you might want to look if there are particular organizations that have open email listservs and sign up for them. But particularly for academic libraries, I see tons of postings just across the whole spectrum of kinds of positions on broader listservs like Alma-L, which is a integrated library system. You might have to do some kind of strategic filtering if you don't want to get like everything that's sent to the listserv, but it's really common for people to post jobs to those kind of listservs as well.
Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing. And then I think there was a question earlier about youth services librarianship. So I just wanted to highlight it in case there are other members in the audience who are also interested in starting off as a youth services librarian. If anyone has that kind of experience, what are some of your experiences starting off as a youth services librarian, and any advice for anyone who's interested in working as a youth librarian?
So don't be afraid of the kids. Kids are all right. So actually, I interviewed for a lot of different library positions and the position within the city, and the position that I wound up getting was youth services because it's one of the more I guess you could say it's in every single branch, plus also at our main library. It might be difficult to be working in, say, like the history department. It might be difficult to work in like special collections at our main library, but there are a ton of youth services positions within the branch libraries. I didn't think that I would like working with kids, but it was really fun. I had a great time as a YSL. Teens were kind of my niche. I got a grant for graphic novels. This was way back before graphic novels were really in the libraries to the extent that they are now. And I still, even though I'm not in youth services anymore, I still have a bit of my foot in youth services programming. Twice a month, I'm part of this program called Sketch Night. It's run by the County of San Diego, but it's library staff that are artists. So it's a virtual art program for ages 10 through 18. And it's a lot of fun. And anyway, so yeah, so don't, even if you think it's going to be awkward working with kids, really just give it a chance. And I think you'll like it.
Thank you, Janet, so much for your perspective. And then I think this next question is a good one. So, what are some challenges or opportunities you often encounter within your respective roles and pathways?
I don't want to jump in again, but I could talk about enforcing the code of conduct if you'd like. All right. So, as the manager at a branch that doesn't have a security guard anymore due to budget cuts, it's my job to enforce the code of conduct, which you think would be things like, oh, telling people to keep it down on their cell phones or maybe not eat in the library. But as those of you that are shaking your head, already know, it's all sorts of strange things, from like people pitching tents on library property to panhandling to drug overdoses to all sorts of interesting things where you might call the police and they might come and they may not come in time. So that's, I would say, one of the biggest challenges is dealing with um, I guess you could say the very unusual, gross violations of the code of conduct. And if you don't have security backup, just handling it.
I have a very different set of challenges. As a digital archivist, I don't deal with the public at all, which was sort of strategic on my part. I just knew that wasn't what I was called towards. I kind of wanted a more behind the scenes role. For me, I'm on a team of five. There's five of us working on this Feinstein project at Stanford, but I'm the only digital archivist. So in some ways, I'm a little bit of a lone arranger. And so there's a lot of kind of independent decision making that's kind of called into question pretty much every day. And there's a lot of moving pieces. It's a massive collection, keeping myself on task. And there's 8 different things going on at once. There's all this different material. I can be accessioning content into a digital repository and then have to work on metadata and then have to supervise somebody's work who's doing metadata. There's just any day, there's any host of challenges and new things and different hats I have to wear. So it's a lot of just keeping myself organized. It's great resume building, but it can be a little exhausting sometimes, wearing as many hats as I sometimes have to. So that's one thing I would say to prepare yourself for is I think that spreads across our entire field. It's just having a lot of different tasks going at once.
That's for sure true in the high school librarian or school librarian setting. So, my first charge is to engage students with reading. And so that is very challenging at the high school level. But there's some really exciting opportunities there. So I got to rebrand our summer reading program into a storytelling society where we're trying to have kids share what they're engaging with. So I also use tech tools like Wakelet. It's sort of like a Pinterest for resources. And that hits the standard of having students curate and figure out what it is that they're interested in. So ultimately, it's about getting students to engage with something. So, a day might look like classes coming in to get research presentations, another class coming in to pick out free reading books, another bunch of kids are just in my space, which is behind me. I get to do this remodel. And they spend their free periods there. So I often check in with students to see if they need anything extra, if they need support. And then, of course, there's the whole supporting the teachers, right? Helping them figure out how to make their lessons sound in terms of research practices and getting students to cite their sources. And now we are having the AI discussion. So it's trying to figure out the appropriate use of AI, whether they're using it as a study tool or as something to help them find information, and then obviously making sure that they're not misrepresenting their own work using AI. So again, a host of things. I feel like the Adobe partnership is really great for my personal learning network of like-minded librarians who also want to be sort of cutting edge with technology, but also still love picking up a physical book. So, and we offer physical books. We have archives of our school. We have a Sora database. We have Wonder Books, Playways. We have it all, and I have to do it all. So I have the web. I have to manage my website, which is, I mean, no one said I have to do that, but a good librarian has to do that for high school. And then have to do all the cataloging and whatnot. And I do have one assistant, so it's a lot. And a lot of team members then come and work and learn some of the tasks too. So
I was just going to add that AI is definitely a challenge we're facing in law school. My job is to teach them how to do legal research, and as a long-term lawyer, I want them to know the fundamentals and how to properly go about it. But a couple years ago, everyone was talking about how basically lawyers would be extinct because AI was going to take over the legal research field, and it just has not come anywhere close to that. There's the hallucinations. You've probably seen the things in the news about lawyers who have filed briefs and been sanctioned because they quoted cases that simply didn't exist. And even to this day, both Lexis and Westlaw, which are the main legal research databases that lawyers use, and if you take legal research at San Jose State, probably with Vicki Steiner, you'll learn about those. But they just have not come along as far as everyone expected. So we're trying to balance making sure our students are familiar with it, so that they can grow with it in the future, but also not relying on it instead of just using it as maybe a starting point and then doing legal research the old-fashioned way, frankly. But it's definitely an ongoing challenge.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspectives on all the unique challenges and opportunities I think facing the field right now, which I think will also segue into this question, which is actually two individuals asked a very similar question. I know some of the panelists have started answering the chat, but feel free if you want to expand further. What are some of your thoughts on how this recent presidential administration, which I think is the big question, is impacting our field? I know some examples mentioned were like defunding libraries, but of course, there's many ways that the field is being impacted, and ways, I guess, maybe for students to navigate those feelings of uncertainty and what some of your thoughts are with a lot of these changes coming into play.
That's one of the first thing I asked my director at our last branch managers meeting is, how is the new regime going to impact our department? And for our department, we don't rely a lot on federal funds. However, I don't know, she didn't know either if federal funds being taken away from the city would impact us in the long run. So that's a concern. This is something, I mean, the current administration is something that I stress over daily now. I have friends that work in the Social Security office. They are fearful for their jobs being lost. So I don't know what might come down the line that might impact our departments, like some sort of, ban against certain types of books. It's nationwide. So, I don't really have any answers for that. But at least, it's again going to depend on whether the organization that you work for is dependent on federal funds, which I'm worried for the colleges. I really am. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mince words. It's a grim climate out there, and I really do feel for everyone who's currently in school. It's just like an added level of stress that you don't really need. I mean, I thought I was going to go into federal government kind of work, being at the Library of Congress for a summer internship. That's kind of where I thought I was going to go. And I will say the legislative branch so far has not been nearly quite as impacted. So if you are still interested in government work, I'd say that's kind of your in. I still see Library of Congress hiring for positions. So there's a little silver lining there, but it's obviously not great. It's impacting, I think, at every level, places you wouldn't expect. Stanford is currently on a hiring freeze, so it is impacting universities. But I mean, it's all hope is not lost. I think there's still, you're just going to have to get a little creative and do what you can to kind of get into your community and figure out I think the volunteer opportunities are great. It's not ideal. But while you're in school, I think getting some experience to kind of give you that extra leg up could be helpful. So I really do just feel for you all. I'm sorry.
I want to jump in here and talk a little bit about something that we haven't really gone over yet. One thing that I experienced that I hadn't thought about when looking for library jobs was the environment or the culture of where I was working. So I'm a native San Diegan from California, and being a military spouse, that's why we're in Virginia. They're very, very different. And one of the things I experienced while working as a librarian here in Virginia was such a different culture with my coworkers. I felt very isolated in a lot of my feelings and beliefs in terms of sort of what's going on right now in the country. and how concerning it is. And so that really impacted my mental state, my ability to do my job, my comfort level, because I felt like I couldn't really be my genuine, authentic self, which I think to really do a good job in your work, you need to be able to be your true, authentic self. And so when I joined as a professor for the iSchool, it could not have been more different. And it was really refreshing to me. And it really showed me how important that is. And like I said, having never really experienced that before, it was something I had never considered. So when you're going out and looking for jobs, don't just look for kind of the standard things. Do a little bit of research into the organization. Think about the area that you're looking for jobs in. It can really make a difference and impact, your experience in a really profound way. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your insights on that question. And I guess to maybe take it to a more, like, not a more positive note, but I realized I didn't get to ask this in the session. So if anyone actually happened to bring coffee for the Connect Over coffee, feel free to drop like what you're sipping on. Awesome. Perfect. Feel free to show it to the camera, just because I know that's a very heavy and a very loaded question, but a very valid one as well, and what everyone's kind of on the back of everyone's minds right now. So hopefully you're getting caffeinated and still kind of enjoying this chat as well. Um, Love that everyone brought caffeine. I drank too much caffeine already today, so I was like, let me not go even more. So I think we also have a couple of students here on this call who are maybe looking to apply for full-time jobs already and are wondering what the impact of volunteer work is on their resumes. I know some people, again, some panelists have began to answer, but if anyone wants to expand on either the use of volunteer experience on resumes or even leveraging current positions to help with the job search, any advice would be more than welcome.
One thing I'll jump in with real quick. When I started in libraries, I didn't really have any relevant experience, but sometimes you kind of have to tweak what you're doing to fit what you want to do and get creative with that and be able to explain that connection. For example, my background before libraries is in retail. Specifically Hallmark. And so I was organizing cards and all of that, which, if you think about it, is really similar to a entry level library position of organizing books and cataloging. So while on the surface it may not seem similar, sometimes if you drill down into what is specifically you're doing, it can connect. So just get a little creative with thinking about what you're doing and what you want to do and try and make those connections. But definitely volunteering is absolutely valid. Do it.
I wanted to piggyback off what you said. For San Diego Public, one of the things that we look for, if you don't have library experience, is customer service skills and cash register experience if you're coming in as a library assistant too, so clerical. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you haven't worked at a bookstore before. If you've done customer service, if you've worked with the cash register, that's going to be your entry into our system. Again, volunteering in our system is a key way to get in. There are mentorships that you can do. Internships that you can do. And also there is a media arts program, which our system has been using some of the media arts students to do Facebook posts for us. That is also another way to get in the system as well. But yeah, volunteering, definitely do it. It's a good way to get your foot in the door.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for elaborating on that answer. And then I haven't seen too many more questions come in the chat, but definitely a lot of thank yous for so far answering all the questions we've had in the chat. And I did have one question, maybe to elaborate on that. What are some key skills and qualities you think, especially in each of your specialties, helps make maybe applicants stand out? And it can be like from current library experiences or even transferable skills, since I think both sound like very valuable when navigating the job search.
For us, it's computer and foreign language skills are real important. If you're skilled in Spanish or other languages that are popular in the area, I guess you would say, like Vietnamese, Tagalog, Chinese, um, that would be a good skill to have, or those would be good skills to have in order to get on board as a staff member. Computer skills as well. Not specifically say like things that don't relate to the job, meaning if you have skills in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that would help. But if you have skills in graphic design, not necessarily so, unless you're going to work for a marketing department.
In cataloging and metadata land, on top of just basic skills of being very organized and having attention to detail and thinking about the impact of how your description is going to help or potentially hinder users from discovering the resources. We have very standards-based work. So if you are planning to go into this area, it's important to be familiar with the commonly used standards of, so they're a little bit different if you're going into like traditional cataloging versus metadata. Another thing would be kind of platforms and tools, even if you may not be able to get hands-on experience with them, just being familiar with what they are and like the potential for using them so that you can speak about it would be very helpful.
Yeah, piggybacking, Natalie and I have very similar roles and kind of backgrounds. And I think having specific platform experience, which when I was going through the SJSU MLIS program, I really tried to take courses that had a lot of practical hands-on project experience. So I'm thinking of the digital curation class with Alice Scott. We built an entire collection in content DM. So I got content DM experience. The metadata class with Mary Bolin, I got to learn and use a lot of different metadata schemas. And that's, let's see what else. We did web archiving in, sorry, that was a digital curation class. I also took the digital preservation class with Alice Scott. She's fantastic for both, highly recommend her for anything she teaches. And that kind of gave me some of the skills I needed to then not only say I had those skills, but I have transferable skills to be able to learn and adapt to new platforms. Because at Stanford, everything is bespoke. We're not using any of those, but I have the experience with those types of tools that then meant I could quickly adapt and learn kind of on the fly what these kind of in-house digital repositories and all that kind of stuff. So, and then on my end, knowing a little bit of command line and light programming helps a lot. We're doing a lot of manipulation with files and being able to use a quick command from there, having Python experience would be really helpful.
One thing that comes up surprisingly often in my job that I had the opportunity to do a couple times at SJSU was creating LibGuides. We recommend LibGuides all the time. I supervise our library research assistants. We encourage them to find a topic that they're interested in and work at creating a LibGuide. And we use our LibGuides to provide information to a wide variety of people, including our students. So I did a couple of them in a couple different classes while I was at SJSU, and it's been something that it's a skill that has come back and helped me a lot since I've been out and working as a law librarian.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for answering that question. And then I think one additional question I have is what is something you wish someone knew about, I guess, your area of librarianship that sometimes you realize people have a misconception about?
I think for me, it's the age-old digitization does not equal digital preservation. I think a lot of people assume that something is digital, it's online, it's going to last forever. Very much not so. And I spend a lot of time explaining to people why that's not the case. So that's probably the one for me.
One for me, oddly enough, is people expect libraries to, well, public libraries to be quiet as the grave, and the reality is much different. So I have to spend a fair amount of time explaining to people that libraries now are not like the libraries of old. They're more like community centers now. We have story times, we've got programs. It's going to be noisy. It's not going to be screaming and yelling noisy, but there's going to be, background noise. Um, we have one study room, it's used all the time. I wish we had five. But yeah, I mean, so that's probably what I get most of the time.
Well, I guess one thing I wish people knew about law librarianship is that there's a lot of different ways to practice law librarianship. I do it in an academic setting at USC, but other law librarians work in law firms. They work for the county law libraries. They work for the government, like the Ninth Circuit, assisting the justices there. And there's a really big growth opportunity there. Every day, I get emails in my inbox from AALL, the American Association of Law Libraries, seeking law librarians at like institutions all across the country. It's something that can transfer from state to state. Kaylee talked about how she's moved around as a military wife. Um, just this last week, I've seen advertisements or job openings for law librarians in New York, in Minnesota, in Chicago, in Florida. So it's something that you can use and find positions all across the country. So there's really a growth opportunity there. If anyone's interested in law librarianship at all, I'd encourage you to look into that and think about pursuing that.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Oh, did you have something to add
Oh,
as well? Betsy, feel free to
I was
share.
just going to add that I don't think that anyone here is on the teacher pathway, but as a high school librarian, there are also many different ways to be a high school librarian, right? So my four counterparts in the district, one, her catalog is perfection, right? And my space is a very dynamic space, and we're trying to genre find. We're letting the students have a voice in that. It's, again, sort of library 2.0. And then there's another person who's really big on the maker space. And then there's another person that just has sort of like a study hall all the time. So again, school libraries are not quiet places either. I'm sure they can be, depending on how you want to set up your space or what your school needs. But there are a lot of different ways to be a high school librarian without being a teacher first and just having your master's. So I think earlier I said that you had to be on the pathway, but that was just for the teacher library authorization. So if you have your master's and you're thinking about high school librarianship at all, hop in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we had somebody who wanted to unmute to ask their question. So I'll go ahead and let them unmute themselves to ask the panelists before I move on back to the chat.
Hi, thank you. I was having problems with my raised hand button, so I couldn't. Thank you. This question actually is for Diane. I think someone just posted it. So my background is in academic libraries, and I'm actually a remote intern at the Library of Congress currently. And so it's kind of sparking this renewed interest in law libraries in me. So my question was, about the law degree. Is it necessary? And I think you might have answered it. Is it necessary to kind of, get a law degree? Or is there any other, other positions? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure, be happy to. It's not necessary for a lot of positions. Some positions will advertise that a JD would be preferred, but also if you are working currently in a law library, for instance, they'll take your experience into account. My director was working as a law librarian and then went to night school at Loyola to get her JD. So it varies across the board. I mean, I do think it can be helpful in the law library field to have a JD to understand the areas of the law, etc. But I went to the Conference of New Law Librarians a couple of years ago, and one of the speakers was, very adamant that a JD certainly is not necessary in order to work in law librarianship. So it depends on the context too. In my role, I also teach legal research. Not all positions do that. So you can certainly work in a law library and again, not necessarily have a JD. But some people start out as a law librarian and then go ahead and get their JD too. It can be helpful in some instances for advancement, but it's definitely not required.
Thank you so much, Selena, for unmuting to ask your question. I also wanted to elaborate. Somebody private messaged me to ask what a JD was. So I know JD is sometimes referred as job description, but it's also the Juris Doctorate. If I said that correctly, Diane, feel free to correct me.
You did. Sorry about that. But
No
yeah,
worries.
the degree you go to law school as a JD or a Juris Doctorate. This is again, I have this my long history in law causes me to gloss over things that not everybody automatically knows. So I apologize for not being more specific.
No worries. It's my full-time student services brain, so sometimes students don't know, and that's completely okay. It's normal. So, I think the one question, going back to the chat, is there anything that any panelists are just dying to tell us that we haven't asked yet? Tips, cautions, words of advice? I don't know if there's any topics we haven't touched on yet that you would like to share to the audience.
I just add that librarians are nice people. It's a good group of people to work around. It's a fairly small group of people, particularly in law librarianship. You see the same people over and over again. You work with them on committees. You see them when you go to conferences. But librarians are good people. They have good intentions and they want to help people. They want to spread knowledge. They want to serve the public and realize that libraries are a very important part of our society. So I think that pursuing your MLIS and pursuing librarianship is a great move. I wish I had done it 20 years earlier, but I'm glad that I finally made the change and I have a sign on my wall in my office that says it's not too late. So librarianship is something that's definitely a great career to get into.
I'll jump on that and just say that I think my biggest piece of overarching advice is to just get involved. In any way while you're in your program, get involved. For me, it was being a student assistant, and then participating in conferences, doing internships, like everything that you can do is going to help you, even if in the moment it doesn't feel like it does, or it's frustrating or stressful. It's going to help. You're going to learn something from it, even if you're learning what not to do or what direction not to go in. It's better to learn it now than having to get a job to learn it. Oh, I hate this. Now I got to start the job search over again. So anything that you can do to get that experience, just get involved. And then the only other thing I will say is just be open. Be open to opportunities. Be open to suggestions. Like you guys are all open to that right now because you're here. You want to hear about our different experiences. That's a great mindset to continue to have as you move forward.
Yeah, I was going to mention, Natalie, I think we're on the same wavelength about ePort. Speaking to Callie's point as well, you're going to have a huge collection of experiences at the end of it. And it's a pain. The e-portfolio process is very cumbersome, but it will set you up perfectly for going into job hunting because you're going to have all these stories and experiences kind of top of mind. And that's where you really, I pulled in group projects I did to my interview questions, competitions I did with the Archives Association, little fun things. You can pull in anything really. Speaking back to the volunteer experience, I'd say just get involved as much as you can because you never know when it might come up in an interview and you've got a quick answer for it that you didn't think you would. So that'd be my advice.
My just tip is that you can learn anything you need to know. And I've been through 4 different ILS programs, a number of different changing policies, and new databases, all sorts of just changes that happened in the profession for the entire time that I've been in it. But my just word to the wise is just don't be afraid of change and don't be afraid to learn new things.
I want to just say something on that note, just with the climate and libraries. Don't be afraid. And I think the biggest challenge right now among librarians is, preemptive compliance in certain ways. And so I unfortunately did have a little run-in with Fox News 2 years ago. and it was ugly and it was mean and it was scary. And so you really rely on your community. So again, that community piece is huge. You will get through whatever comes your way, right? Whatever kind of challenge it is. And so I think that's just something to be ready for with the climate right now, and just know that there are people out there ready to support you.
Like the reality, it is a tough job market. I don't want to be too negative about that, but just don't give up. It might take you many applications to get the position that you want, even if it's not a librarian level position. But many of us have been there, and it might help you, especially in this climate, know what your, how to put this. It's very likely you might have to move somewhere, so be aware of that as where you are willing to go, and not.
Thank you everyone for sharing. And I know we have a few minutes left. And I think this question has been answered in the chat. So how prolific are unions and academic libraries? Not sure if anyone wants to expand on that, or if we want to move on to the next question in the chat. I think we are good to go. So we'll go ahead and ask, how competitive are student assistantships, internships? Are they difficult to procure? And many of you have also gone, or I think all of you have gone through the MLIS program at San Jose State. So if you also want to touch on your own experiences on whether they were challenging to procure, feel free to share.
I responded in the chat, but I'll just add that just put yourself out there. Like, I don't really feel like any of them were that challenging. And with fellow students that I knew that also got different ones, they're pretty much all, the assistantships are pretty much all paid. There's internships that are not, and there's some that are for credit, but most of them you get something out of it, whether it's credit or whether it's actually getting paid for it. But just put yourself out there. Like, I don't think they're overly competitive, but I think Sabrina, you said that if, maybe if they're paid, they might be a little bit more competitive. But even then, I think a lot of people don't see them and don't apply for them. And then the other thing is to take into consideration is a lot of people in this program, in the MLIS program at San Jose State, are already working either in the field or in other jobs. So they probably don't have time to take on something else, or they're working and they have families, or, a lot of students are multitasking and do a lot of different things. So if you have the time and the opportunity to apply for one of these assistant positions, do it. If it's even remotely interesting to you, do it. It'll give you a lot of really good experience. Plus, you'll make more connections. You'll get to meet other students. It really enhances the iSchool experience, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Callie, for answering that question. I think we're right at time at 6:30 to end the Connect Over Coffee. I know we are still receiving some questions in the chat, so if either of you are open to sending your contact information in the chat, there's no pressure to do so, but if you want to connect with participants at a later time, or if you're open to receiving those questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I would also like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and being very engaging with our panelists. There were really a lot of great questions asked tonight about the field of librarianship and all the avenues you can pursue. And I just want to wish everyone a great rest of your week. Hopefully, I know that there seems to be a lot of rain in different parts of the country, so definitely stay dry and stay warm, and hopefully stay stress-free this week. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody.